Hello, namaste. Thank you for waiting for a few more minutes just so that we could see if others were joining. But we will start with today's webinar, and people who are joining can join as and when they want because I've kept the link open anyways. So I'm sure most of you know me, but for those who do not know me, my name is Girish. I am from India, but I'm currently living in Bogota in Colombia because my wife is from Colombia and I've been living here in Colombia for almost a year and a half or maybe a little more than that. So now today's topic for discussion was Hinduism, Tantra and Yoga from the perspective of physics and psychology. Now, just because I come from India, it doesn't automatically qualify me for talking about these topics. Of course, being from India gives me certain inputs that comes culturally to me, but I'm also able to speak about these things in a more comprehensive manner because I have spent a considerable time studying these topics and understanding these topics by means of my own studies in the form of books and videos and talking to people and everything. But I have also got the guidance of my teacher, Bhagavan Shanmukha Anantha Natha, whom I consider as my guru. And I have been learning from him since 2017. I have been visiting him in his ashram and also through online and his books and his lectures. I have copious notes of his lectures from the time that I spent with him in the ashram and also from the time that I have spent talking to him over video calls and over telephone. So that sort of lays a foundation for a lot of things that I'm talking about today. So let us also go into all the topics one by one. But I also have to say that these are the systems from the Eastern traditions mostly are imparted in a non-linear way. So there is no lesson one, lesson two, nothing like that. It just flows and you pick up as you go. But what also happens is that is like a rabbit hole because you will never hit the bottom of it. Every time you think that you have reached the end, another channel opens up and something new is opening up from there. So these are very non-exhaustive topics. You can never complete discussing any of these topics. You can start and uh, sort of give a conclusion to a certain extent, but that conclusion will open up new channels for discussion and talking. I also must say that many of the things that I'm talking today might be in contradiction to what people normally understand about yoga, tantra, or Hinduism. And many of my the approach, the most of the approach would also slightly differ from most approaches that are taken. In fact, many of my family and friends from India itself would disagree on many of the things that I'm talking about. But what I want to speak about today is kind of the broad foundation based on which the spiritual discipline itself is built upon. So you can use this as a template and see how these spiritual disciplines are built from there. What I also need to say is that this is not aimed at glorifying Hinduism or Tantra or yoga, because I honestly believe that all spiritual traditions have only one goal, and that is our happiness, our wholesome participation in life. That is the end goal of all spiritual traditions. The only thing that reason I'm speaking about Hinduism and Tantra is because I know a little bit about it and I'll be able to speak about it. What you can do is like you can take the foundations from this and you can put it into your own spiritual belief systems, or even if you do not believe in a god, or even if you're not spiritual, you can apply these principles into your questions of your own existence and see how you can find answers through that. So let us start with the first part of the discussion, that would be about Hinduism. So if you have any questions, please make a note of it. I will not be able to answer all questions as we go, but what you can do is towards the end of the session, you can send me the question through the chat option, or you can unmute yourself and ask the question, but preferably through the chat, so that you can type the question and it is easy for me to read and interpret it and answer easily. So the first topic in hand would be about Hinduism itself. Now, Hinduism is a very broad umbrella term used for many of the spiritual disciplines that is found in the Indian subcontinent or in modern day India. But the word Hinduism was never used by the people of India to refer to their religion. That was the word that was coined by the Europeans, mostly the British, and also to some extent, I'm sure Max Muller would have also contributed to that. So Hinduism refers to a broad range of spiritual disciplines that come from India. However, in the modern context, we understand Hinduism as a specific religion, and we think that it's one homogeneous religion, that everybody in Hinduism believes in the same kind of gods and deities and everything. But that is far from what the truth is. Because if you catch hold of 100,000 Hindus and ask them to define Hinduism and their own spiritual beliefs, they would all give you 100,000 different answers, because that is what the foundation of Hinduism gives you. It gives you the freedom to see God and your own belief systems in your own ways. But the foundation of Hinduism is very fascinating and it is very strong, and that would be the crux of the topic that we are talking about. Now, when you go to India, you would see many religious practices. You would see Christianity, different forms of Christianity. There are Catholics, Protestants, there are Kanais, and many other sub-denominations within that. Then there is Islam. Even within Islam, you would find many sub-variations. There is Buddhism, there is Jainism, there is Sikhism, and there is a Shaktism, Tantrism, and paganism. There are all these things. But what I'm going to talk about today is the foundation of many of these Indic Eastern religion, which would be what we call as the Vedas. The Vedas were probably composed 5 or 6,000 years ago. The dating is always contradicted, and there are different datings on that. But let us, just for today's conversation, let us just say that it is at least 3 to 4,000 years old. Now, the Vedas lays the foundation for almost all Indian religions. So it lays the foundation for everything that we know as Hinduism. It lays the foundation for Sikhism. It lays the foundation for Jainism. It lays the foundation for Buddhism and for different Tantra traditions and different Shakti traditions. So for all these things, the foundation will be the Vedas. Now, what are the Vedas? The Vedas are what we call as a meta science, in the sense that when you say science, science keeps changing as we go through our own evolution, our own intellectual evolution, and our own understanding of the world around us. Our understanding of science also changes. What we think as is true today might not be true tomorrow. I'll give you a very good example. When we were all kids, we learned about 9 planets and Pluto being one of the planets, and now we are saying that Pluto is not a planet. But that doesn't mean that at that point, whatever belief system was held or whatever we understood through science was wrong. It is just that we have evolved from that. So when I say Veda as a meta science, it means that it is pre-science, that we can safely say that all we know as science now can have some sort of origin from the Vedas. There are inspirations from the Vedas that was taken into modern science, including mathematics and physics and whatever we know as astrophysics, astronomy, and things like that. Now, if you ask me, like, can you go back and say, like, okay, there is a theory of evolution in the Vedas? No, I don't know if anybody can prove that. But if you go back to the Vedas and look, you would find the seed of all these things. There'll be the idea of all these things. So, from where did they get this idea of science as we know it now? That comes from the principle of Advaita or non-dualism and monism. So monism means that there is just one God and in various forms, and it's the same God that you're acknowledging and worshiping in different forms. Uh, Whereas Advaita or non-dualism means that you are not separating yourself from God. So you identify yourself with God or you identify yourself as God. So that is Advaita or non-dualism. So there is no separation between you and God. So now when I say you and God, it is not just you as a person. It involves everything. It involves me. It involves you as a person. It involves the computer. It involves this mobile phone, the chair that I'm sitting on. Everything is God. So that is what Advaita stands for, non-dualism, that you do not see a separation between God and ourselves or God and any of the various forms in which it is manifested. Now, when we speak about it, this might go a little over the head. So that is where I say that I will talk it through the lens of physics and psychology. Yeah. So let me explain non-dualism in through the prism of physics. Okay. So um, we can all agree that when we went to school, we always learned something in school which was the foundation of all our scientific discoveries. And that principle is what we call as now I'm forgetting what it is called, but I can explain what it is. It is where we say that there is energy and matter cannot be created nor destroyed, but that energy and matter will only change form. So that's where we are saying that this is what we now know as the law of conservation of energy and matter. Yeah. So once again, we clearly say that energy and matter cannot be created nor destroyed. It only changes form. Yeah. It only changes form. So if that is the case, then my body is just a bag of recycled materials, which is coming from all the things that I've interacted throughout my life. The energy inside me comes from all the things that I've interacted and exchanged energies throughout my life. For example, if I eat a banana, the banana stops to exist. The banana doesn't exist anymore because I've eaten the banana. All the gross particles in the banana, the sugar, the proteins, the fat, the fiber, the carbohydrates, and all the other whatever is inside the banana, including the water molecules and things, all those things becomes part of me. After that, there is no banana. The banana just becomes part of me, right? Now, when I die and decompose, my body basically merges with the elements. If you burn me, I become an ash and I become part of the elements. If you bury me, I just decompose and I become part of the soil. So let us say that I am buried when I die. I become part of the soil. I become the fertilizer in the soil. There are millions and millions of microbes and bacteria and small insects and worms that would have fed on my body. And when it eventually decomposes, I become fertilizer. And let us say that you plant a mango tree there. Yeah. Now the mango tree starts drawing the nutrition from the soil, which is also having my own body and energy merged into that. And from that mango tree, a beautiful mango comes out, and a monkey eats the mango. So the energy inside the mango, the gross particles inside the mango, becomes the gross particles and the energy inside the monkey. And now let us say that tomorrow lion manages to catch the monkey and eat the monkey. So the lion absorbs all the nutrition that was inside the monkey. So basically, the banana became me. I became the soil. The soil became the mango tree. The tree gave the fruit. The monkey ate the fruit, and the lion ate the monkey. So basically, all the things, everybody who thinks that they are something at that point are just a representation of something else which was before that, and are going to be representations of something else that is going to be in the future. That is the cyclic nature of life that we understand in the Indian systems. So it is always change. Whatever we are interacting with is change. The changeless principle, the origin of everything, the origin that we cannot know of, the origin that we can only imagine, that origin that doesn't have time or form or shape, that origin that was there billions and billions of years ago, what scientists and what physicists or whoever it is now are saying that the universe or the pluriverse or the different cosmos that we know of came from a big bang. So what did the bang come out of? It came out of something. It came out of something. It just expanded to be what it is. So that dynamic principle is where we are right now. And that root of the dynamic principle, that origin, is what we call as Brahman or Paramatman in the Indian traditions, in the Vedic traditions. So we all say that we are all part of that Brahman. We are all part of that infinite change. And within that change, we are experiencing this beautiful world, enjoying this and participating in this. So the Vedas sort of gives you a template as to your own question of who I am. If you ask who I am, then how do you answer the question? Then your answer should be that I am a spark of the infinite divine being. Your answer should always be I am a spark of the infinite divine being. This is what we call as Chidananda Rupa in the Indian traditions. In Sanskrit, we call it as Chidananda Rupa, the infinite happy being of, or the infinite spark of the divine being. And that divine being is Brahma, which doesn't have a form, it doesn't have time, it doesn't have a shape or color, nothing. It is there, and it has manifested into you. So there is no difference between you and God, because whatever you call as God was the absolute totality of everything, and that totality is being represented in everything that you see around you. I'll give you one more small example. If you take a glass of water, you have water inside the glass. Think of that glass as God, the divine infinite being. Now, you take a spoon and take a spoon of water from that. The water inside the spoon is the same as the water inside the glass, and this water is also part of the divine infinite being. It has the same properties as the water inside the glass. If you take a needle and take just a small molecule of water from that spoon, that small, minutest part of water also has all the characteristic of water that is in the spoon. It has the same characteristic of water which is in the glass. It has the same characteristic of water which is you'll find it in the ocean or in the river. Yeah, it has the same properties. It has the same two hydrogen atoms and one or two hydrogen molecules and one molecule of oxygen. I might be wrong here, molecule or atom. I'm not a science person. I'm just using science as an analogy. But you get the idea of it. The quality of the water doesn't change just because it is being made into small pieces. If you put that drop back into the glass of water, you wouldn't know that it came back from the drop. It just merges into that. So that is what we are all. That is what Vedas teaches us. It just teaches us that you are all sparks of the divine infinite being. But the problem is that we cannot understand that. It is difficult for us to understand. In 2022, when I'm talking about it, even then, it is difficult for many of us to understand that, because it was difficult for me to understand this concept 6 or 7 years back. So I'm assuming that there might be many other people who also find it difficult to understand these concepts. So just imagine how they would have been 4,000 years back trying to explain this concept to anybody. They wouldn't understand that. So that is why somebody discovered this idea. Somebody, it might not be one person, it might be a collection of people who spoke and came about these ideas. And they said, wow, this is a nice idea. We should develop on these ideas. And that is a group of people most likely created the Vedas. I might be completely wrong here. I'm not a scholar, I'm not a researcher on these topics. I'm just talking from my own little understanding that comes from reading and talking to people. So, all those thousands of years back, if you try to explain to people about Big Bang theories, they might not understand. So, they just called it as Brahman. They did not know what it is, they just called it as Brahman. And if you have any doubt whether they had some sort of understanding of this, that doubt should be eliminated, because they did have understanding of a lot of things that we think they never understood. Because when you look at the Vedas and the scriptures, all the other supporting scriptures, the Upanishads, the Aranyakas, the Samhitas, and all the Tantras that come after that, they all talk about different astronomical phenomena, and they were able to understand that because they had a keen sense of observation, and they hypothesized. It was, they were never able to prove it. They hypothesized and they built their spiritual belief system on this hypothesis that they are all connected. Everything that you see and you cannot see, and you can feel and you cannot feel, everything is connected. So I accept the divinity inside you. I see the divinity inside you. We always say, like in India, we say namaste. This is a very common phrase that is used in India to greet people, and also this is also a mark of respect for a lot of things. And now across the world, people who are practicing yoga and other Indian spiritual traditions, they use the word namaste. And many times people do not know what it is. They know that namaste means hello or hi or greetings to you, but namaste comes from two words. One is namaha, and the second one is te. Namaha and te. Namaha means I acknowledge you, I bow to you, or I dissolve myself in front of you. And te is to you. Te means to you. So namaha te is I bow myself to you, or I dissolve myself in front of you. Just because of some grammatical rules in Sanskrit, namaha plus te becomes namaste. Yeah, it is just purely grammatical. So when we say namaste, what we are saying is that I acknowledge the divinity inside you, and that is what we are talking about, the non-duality. You see the divinity inside the other person, inside the other thing, your telephone, your car, your pet, your animal, your house, whatever it is. Everything is part of the divine being. So you acknowledge that we all are connected. And that is why we say namaste, basically. So the namaste itself explains the whole gamut of the Indian spiritual traditions. So that is where the Vedas are. That is the idea behind the Vedas. And this idea, this root idea from the Vedas, was taken and developed into other spiritual traditions like Buddhism or Sikhism or Jainism or Shaktism or Tantrism. Uh, what happened, most likely happened in all these cases, is that they just use a different story and a different example depending on the geographic area and the time that they were living and to whom they were speaking, to explain the concept of Vedas. And that is how you have all these different traditions. When you go back, when you take out all the layers from all these traditions, it always goes back to the concepts that are explained in the Vedas, that there is no difference between you and I. So basically, all the Indian spiritual traditions, at least all the Indian spiritual traditions, they all speak about the same thing. And I would as much as go to say that it is not just Indian spiritual traditions. You look at other spiritual traditions like the Zen and the Taoism from China and Japan, or you look at the Balinese traditions or the Taiwanese traditions, they all have similar ideas because these ideas went around the world. And I am not saying that all the ideas in the world they come from the Vedas. I'm just saying that it can be traced back to the Vedas. Maybe the origins are somewhere else, but let us not go into which came first, which religious principles came first. That is not going to help us. What I'm going to say is just that I can honestly trace back all these back to the Vedas. Maybe if you start doing your own research, you'll be able to trace it back to your own spiritual ideas or some other scriptures or non-spiritual ideas, whatever it is. So even in, for example, if you take Islam, in Islam, they say that La ilaha illallah, or there is no other God than Allah. And so if you replace Allah with the infinite divine being, then what they're saying is, right, there is nothing else than Allah. There is only one God. And then Allah is the greatest. The God is the greatest. Of course, God is the greatest. So what is God? God is that infinite, never changing principle of which you are all sparks. So there is no need to, at least from the Vedic perspectives, we don't say that God is higher than you. Of course, God is higher than you in a sense that because God is everything, but you are not lower, you are not inferior. Do not fear God. The fear based belief systems is only going to put us more and more into neurosis. So that is where we say that you have to have that freedom and understanding of what God is and act from that position of strength, that position of knowing that I am also divine. I am as much divine as this chair that I'm sitting in, so that I do not mistreat this chair. I do not mistreat the other person. I don't mistreat my own self. So that is what we are always talking about in non-dualism, and that is what again they speak about in Islam. And if you go to Christianity also, you will find the same things that Jesus is always saying, that love your neighbor, love everybody, forgive everybody, be compassionate. Jesus always said that I am the Son of God. The Son of God is a God itself. We are all children of God, so we are also gods. So we need to really understand that, and that becomes the foundation of what we now know as most of the Indian traditions. And it is no different from Hinduism, or it is not just unique to Hinduism. The Hinduism as a identity, as a religious identity, is only 200 years old, and that came because of the Europeans who were there, particularly the British, because for administrative reason, they were trying to, find out, okay, how many people are Christians, how many people are Muslims, and then they saw all these people with the turbans who said that, okay, we are followers of Guru Nanak, we are called as Sikhs, so they were called the Sikhs. Then there was the followers of Mahavir Jain, who was a great spiritual leader. The British called them as the Jains. And then there were the followers of the Buddha, and the British called them as the Buddhas. And then they came to the vast majority of the people and asked them, what do you follow? Then they asked 1,000 people, and 1,000 people gave a different answer. So the British were not able to, make 1,000 different names for all these people. So they called all these people as Hindus. So basically, it is a mixture of a lot of belief systems. But every Hindu, every Jain, every Sikh, every Buddhist, at least from these traditions, I can say that they always believe that there is one God who is supreme, and we are all sparks of that infinite divine being. Maybe they don't say it as much because that kind of discussion has vanished or evaporated from our day-to-day lives nowadays. We don't talk so much about it. But that is the truth. If you ask me, who are you? I would say that I am a spark of the infinite divine being who is living on this, in this dimension, in this time and space, by the name of Girish. I identify myself by the name of Girish. I identify myself as a human being or as a male, but those are all just limited identities. But beyond all those identities, I am just a spark of the divine infinite being. And so that is what the Vedic traditions always teach us. Now, the next topic or subtopic or whatever we want to call it that we are going to discuss today is about Tantra. Now, Tantra is gaining a lot of popularity in the times that we are living in, but in many occasions, people wrongly understand what Tantra is. Tantra is glamorized and sexualized and commercialized right now, but Tantra goes beyond all these things. Tantra also has its foundation in the Vedas. Tantra used all the foundational aspects of the Vedas and made it in a way that people 2000 years later could understand, because the Vedas were written somewhere 4000, 5000 years ago. The Tantras, as we know it, mostly started gaining significance only about 2000 years ago, or maybe a little 2500 or 3000 years ago, but it definitely comes after the Vedas, but it follows the footstep of the Vedas and it explains Vedas in a way that the people at that time could understand. And in fact, Tantra probably explains the concepts in the Vedas in a more precise way that even now in the 21st century we are able to talk and understand that and connect to it much better than others. So what is Tantra? Before that, what Tantra is not? Tantra is not just, if you go to India and ask Tantra, many parts of northern Indians, they would, many people from northern part of India and maybe even south and eastern parts of India, they would associate Tantra with black magic. If you go to Kerala and ask, Kerala is a state in South India. If you ask in Kerala what is Tantra, they would say that Tantra is ritualistic practices inside temples. And if you go to Europe and North, Central, and South America and ask what Tantra is, they would associate Tantra with sexuality. Now, all these people are right to a certain extent, but they're not completely right, because Tantra involves a little bit of all these things. Maybe not so much of black magic, but all the other things, yes. But Tantra goes beyond all these things. Tantra is a philosophical approach towards life, which has its foundation in the Vedas. And Tantra just teaches us to live our life freely and happily. Two things, freely and happily. So freedom becomes the crux of Tantra. Tantra is all about your freedom. It talks about freedom, and we have a word for it, Swatantra, or Swatantriya. It is your freedom. And what is this freedom they are talking about? It is the freedom that they are talking about in the Tantras is the freedom of the mind, the freedom of the thought, the ideas that we hold and say that, I am a human being, I'm a man, I'm American, I'm Indian. All these things are the limited identities which is preventing us from being and living our life in a completely honest way. So Tantra teaches you how to live life freely and happily. Be a very happy participant in life. And that is what Tantra teaches you. Tantra doesn't teach you anything else. Tantra just teaches you happiness and freedom. And there are thousands of tantras. Tantra is not just one thing. There are like thousands of scriptures, what we call as the tantras. Tantras are scriptures, they are documents, they are like a code that is written for you. It is, just think of it as a user manual. You buy a Samsung phone, you get a different user manual. You buy a Motorola phone, you get a different user manual. Think that you are Samsung, you are the Samsung phone, you are the person is the Samsung phone, and your Tantra is the Samsung instruction book. You are a Motorola phone, then your instruction manual is the instruction manual that Motorola gave. But the foundation of all both the user manual would be the same thing. They would say that you have to charge the battery, you have to take care of the phone, do not drop the phone, do not heat the phone, do not put the water in the phone. That they will say it for Samsung and Motorola, for both phones they say. No, I'm just taking very loose examples, just to give an example. Yeah. So all the different tantras, they just modify their stories and their examples and their analogies to connect with people, depending on who wrote the tantras. But at the foundation of all these things, it always talks about happiness and freedom. That is what all the tantras talk about. In fact, Jaina, you can always say that Sikhism is one of the tantras, Jainism is one of the tantras, or even Buddhism is definitely one of the tantras. Within Buddhism itself, there are different tantras. Within Jainism, there are different tantras. And Tantra gives you that sort of freedom and happiness. And Tantra can be found in other religious practices as well. Taoism is a form of Tantra. The Zen ideas is one of the forms of Tantras. Um, think about the Kabbalah practices of the Jew, that is tantric in nature. The Sufi practices in Islam, that is tantric in nature. So all these things, all these spiritual traditions, they are all connected. They all speak the same language. It is just that we don't understand it and we start misrepresenting it. We start holding on to our own limited ideas and our own religious beliefs and say that this is the best. No, if you're hungry, you can eat pasta or pizza. If you're, or you can eat rice. And if you're lactose intolerant, then you don't eat pasta with cheese. You just eat pasta without cheese. So, but the end goal is to fill your stomach. It is the same thing with all the tantras and all the scriptures. The end goal is to give you freedom and happiness. Anything that doesn't give you freedom or happiness, that is something that you should let go of. If there is any religious scripture that is invoking fear in you, making you think that you are not good enough, then probably that is something that you have to ask a question, because you are divine. How can you not be divine? So that is basically what Tantra teaches you. And I have been learning Tantra from my teacher for 5 or 6 years now. And I have read many books on these topics, many books written by Indian scholars, many books reinterpreted by Indian scholars, many books written by people from outside India also on these topics. And they all talk about the same thing. So I can say with 100% confidence that what I'm saying, that Tantra just teaches you to be happy and free, is 100% true. You can take any of the Tantras, you can talk to any of the scholars in Tantra and ask them, and they'll give you the same answer. But Tantra, the way I'm talking, is very different from what Neo-Tantra is, or what people understand as Tantra now. Because Neo-Tantra originated probably from California or Europe, some of these cultures, when it started the hippie movement in the 1960s and 70s, because they were looking for freedom. Really, the hippies who came to India at that point, they were looking for freedom. And in that process, they discovered something about Tantra. But the thing is, they never had the philosophical acumen to really understand and explain Tantra. So they just took out aspects that made them happy and then continued with it. They never went beyond that. Because what happened in the 1960s and the 70s was, with the hippie movement, there was also the second wave of feminism. Because the world was coming out of World War II and the Great Depression, the world was rebuilding itself. So there was a great deal of population, or like one whole generation, who had suffered for a long, long time, and they were looking for freedom. And freedom in all sense, freedom from being governed, being a part of like a government organization. They didn't want to have passports or visas. They did not want to be tied down to anything. They wanted to explore the world. They wanted to find happiness. And in that process, there was also one category of people who were probably very oppressed until then, and that were the women, because women were oppressed for a long, long time. And in the 1960s and 70s, they started getting the first wave of feminism happened in the 1920s or 30s, and then the second wave happened in the 1960s. And the second wave of feminism had one significant factor that changed a lot of things for women, and that was in the form of contraception, which gave women a lot of sexual freedom, which was not available to them before. And so they started expressing their sexuality from a position of freedom. And so they saw many of these things in the Indian scriptures that spoke about conscious sexuality, and or sexuality from a very holistic position. Because in the tantric traditions, we see sexual expression as a very holistic expression, and they took that because they were looking for freedom, and they found that freedom. They took it, and they took it back with them when they went home. They taught their friends and family and children. And so that is how Tantra gets associated with sexuality. So there is a small connection between Tantra and sexuality, but Tantra should be understood from beyond that perspective, because Tantra talks about a lot of things. It talks about happiness and freedom in everything that you do. So eating, you also find joy in eating. You find joy in cooking, or taking a dog out for a walk. So Tantra talks about happiness and freedom in all these things, and it asks you to do all these things from a happy and free position. So sexuality also becomes that. But for many parts of the world which had a huge oppression in terms of sexuality, they found this newfound freedom very opening, very enlivening, and they started sharing it. So, and that is happening even to this day. But I think we should make a small distinction and say that Tantra is not just about sexuality. It talks about a lot of other things, and we should talk about those things as well, because those are also important. Um, but like a few years back, 2 or 3 years, maybe like 4 or 5 years back, before I actually met my teacher and started understanding Tantra, even my own understanding of Tantra was from a position of sexual freedom. And I explored those options, and I was a happy person there. But at a later point, I realized that there is more than that. And then I started looking for it, and I'm finding more happiness in that. So there is nothing wrong with sexuality or using the tantric aspects in your sexuality, but don't limit Tantra just to sexuality. There is just a request so that you don't associate or misrepresent something. It has to be represented in its true sense. So everybody who's watching this video, and if you have always thought about Tantra from a sexual perspective, I encourage you to look at it from a different perspective. And you can write to me or reach out to me, and I will give you all the literature that you can read and understand the Tantra from a different perspective. So that as I was talking before, talking about any of these things is like going into a rabbit hole. You never reach the bottom. Every time you think you reach a bottom, you find another tunnel where you have to go. Every ending is a beginning for something else, and sometimes it loop backs to the same thing. So I could go on talking about Tantra for hours and hours, but that defeats the purpose of why we are here today for this webinar. So instead, I will just go to the next topic, that is yoga. I will continue doing these talks over a period of time, and I will touch upon many of the other topics also as we go and go deeper into all these topics. But for today, we will set a small boundary as to what we are talking about. So let us talk about yoga now, because yoga is very popular now. There is a lot of yoga everywhere. There is I see more yoga here in Colombia than what I see in India. There is it is very interesting. I go to the supermarket and buy a box of tea. I see a yogi sitting on the box of tea. So yoga is everywhere, and I want to speak about yoga from the perspective of Indian traditions and what we believe in India as yoga, and from a psychological perspective as well. Again, people might disagree with what I'm saying, and there are a lot of other people like me who would completely agree with what I'm saying, because we have studied yoga from that perspective. Yeah. So what is not yoga? Yoga is not just bending your leg and holding your breath. If bending your legs and putting it behind your head and holding your breath, if that was yoga, then the best yogi in the world was never born. I will repeat that. If bending your legs, putting it behind your head, and holding your breath, if that was yoga, then the best yogi in the world is never born, because that is who a baby is. A baby in the mother's womb is all like this and it cannot breathe, right? So then the best yogi in the world is in the mother's womb. The moment the baby comes out, it starts crying, right? So the best yogi is never born. You can only aspire to be the best yogi. So that being said, so yoga is not just about the body. Yoga is always about the mind. You use your body and your breath and everything else around you for the benefit of your mind. That is yoga. So all the postures, all the asanas, meditation, dhyanas, whatever we are calling, all these things are for your mind and for your mind alone. You might get some benefits for the body. Yeah, you might get some benefits for the body, or you are getting some benefits for the body, but the most important benefit that you're looking for is in the mind. And I will explain that with the base of psychology. Again, I'm not a psychologist. I've just read, understood these things, and spoken to people, and I am drawing my own inferences from that. I might not be exactly right, but this will give you a template or like a platform to explore these ideas further. Yeah. So I said yoga is about the mind. So first, let's talk about the mind itself. So our mind is fantastic. It's one of those most beautiful things. It can do phenomenal things. It can remember a lot of things. It You can use your mind to do a lot of things and even to manipulate people and animals and situations. Yeah. So it is a beautiful thing. How well are we using our mind, or how connected are we to our mind? That becomes the question. So at the gross level, at the normal day-to-day lives, we have the conscious mind, which is where we are all operating now. The conscious mind is full of lies, conditionings, fear, anger, jealousy, hatred. We are always trying to manipulate situations. At least I can say for myself. I don't know about you. Yeah, at least about myself and some other people who have agreed with me on this. Yeah, that we use our conscious mind to manipulate situations. We do not act from a position of happiness, wholesomeness, or love or kindness in our conscious decisions. Many a times we look at what can we get out of it, or how are we going to benefit out of it. It might be very small, it is not evil, but it is for our own safety and what we think is our happiness. For that purpose, we use our conscious mind, and that is where we all operate mostly. Yeah. And then just above that, you have the subconscious mind. Now, the subconscious mind is always there in the background. It is like how do I say? It is like templates or a mold or a platform or a formula. You take all these memories from your conscious life and then you put it into your subconscious. What is subconscious does is that it gives you a response based on the past patterns. Subconscious just records patterns. It has a judgment, it has conditionings. So your conscious mind is often dictated by your subconscious mind, which is full of judgments, which is full of false things. For example, let us say that I know that my father doesn't like a particular thing. Just example, let us say that I already gave this example once, but I'll take it once again. Let us take, for example, that my father does not like coffee. And right from my childhood, I know that my father hates coffee. So I would do everything to avoid coffee in the house or talk about coffee or anything about coffee when my father is around. So my conscious mind has put that into my subconscious mind. And whenever I want to act around my father, my subconscious mind is telling me, coffee, 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 no coffee, no coffee, no coffee. That's what my subconscious mind is telling me. This is just a very gross example. Yeah, you can take this example and amplify it and look at any other situation. Look at our own relationships. Are we being honest in our relationships? When we are in our relationship and we know that okay, our partner doesn't like this, or if you are in the beginning stage of a relationship, you see a guy or a girl and you know that that person likes particular things or does not like particular things, in order to make that person a part of your life, you are willing to sacrifice your integrity, and you're going to use all these ideas in your subconscious saying that, oh, last time when I told this joke, this person laughed, so I should tell that joke. It doesn't matter whether joke is any more appropriate or not. You would still say that because your subconscious is already telling you to do that. So your subconscious always has a judgment. Now, beyond this, so you have the conscious mind, which is full of lies, and then you have your subconscious mind, which is based on judgments and past patterns, and then you have your unconscious or your superconscious mind, where you record everything without a judgment. You're plain and whole there. You record everything there. It is like the flight recorder box or the black box in a flight. It records everything without judgment. It just records. So what you need to do to make your life beautiful is that your conscious mind should be able to talk to your unconscious mind by replacing all these patterns in your subconscious mind. So your subconscious mind should become directly connected with your conscious mind, so that directly connected with your unconscious mind, so that your subconscious is telling you to do the right things. It is asking you to do work from a position of freedom and honesty rather than from a position of bias or fears. So how do you access this superconscious or your unconscious or the purest part of your mind? I said that you are whole, you are complete. You're a spark of the divine infinite beings. Yeah, that's something that I said from the beginning. So how do you access that divine being inside you? That divine being inside you is your superconscious unconscious mind. How do you access that? And accessing that, the process of accessing that is called as meditation. Meditation is not sitting like this and telling, I want to meditate, I want to meditate. You don't meditate like that. Meditation is the process of accessing your purest part of your mind, and that happens when you start letting go of all your fears, all your conditionings, all your ideas, your anxiety, your anger, and all these things. So now, how do you meditate? You need to meditate to access your superconscious mind. And then how do you meditate? To meditate, you practice yoga. So remember, I said that yoga is always about the mind. So you use yoga as a tool for meditation. Now, I will also make it very clear that you do not have to do yoga to meditate. You can meditate doing kung fu, taekwondo, judo, karate, ballet. You can sing, you can dance, you can cook. Anything that allows you to access the purest part of your mind, that process is meditation. And anything that helps you do that, you should do that. Right? So yoga, we were talking about yoga. So yoga becomes a tool for meditation. So that is why in what I practice and teach is what we call as the Kaula Tantra Yoga. And in this system, we practice with our eyes closed. We repeat things, we repeat again and again and again, so that we are not thinking, we are not judging, we are not competing. By closing our eyes, you are not competing with somebody else. You're not even competing with yourself. You're letting go of yourself. You're finding freedom through your body. You're enabling your body to cultivate meditation. So in the Kaula Tantra yoga traditions, we close our eyes and meditate. And this was how yoga was practiced for a long, long time before yoga studios. People practiced yoga on their own. the concept of practicing yoga in studios is very recent. It's just like less than 100 years old. Earlier, people practice yoga at home or in a temple, maybe, or many times there was no concept of practicing yoga in groups. It was not yoga performance. It was yoga practice. There is a difference between the two of those things. So in all the older traditions as well, how we learnt and practiced yoga was that we would go to a teacher and the teacher would teach you how to practice yoga. You would practice there along with the teacher. You learn from the teacher and then you go home and practice, and you practice. You'll reach a stage where you're feeling good about it. You want to learn something more. You go back to your teacher, you learn something more. So it was a continuous process. But it was never about physical perfection. It was never about physical perfection. It was always about the mind. So your physical movements were always based on how much you can move. It changes from person to person. So there is no perfect yoga posture. You can have a broad idea as to this is how a posture is performed, but you cannot have a perfect posture. And the body becomes a tool to access your mind. So that's what I was talking about, psychology. Because when you're moving in certain ways, you change your breathing pattern, you change the way you're thinking, and it enables you to access your mind in certain ways. Um, for example, our brain has this nice region called as amygdala. The amygdala controls two emotions. It controls your fear and your anger. Your fear, anger, anxiety, all these things are controlled by your amygdala. And there's also a chemical involved in there, which is the cortisol. So in certain postures, you feel that you're drowning, but you tell yourself that you're not drowning, that you're safe and secure. So you're overcoming your fear. And in the process of you overcoming your fear, you overcome your anger and anxiety, because the brain, that particular region of the brain, is connected. So instead of having more cortisol in your body, you're having serotonin when you're going into shavasana. So when you are resting, you're happy, you're free. So you have more serotonin and more a little bit of dopamine, a little bit of adrenaline. All these things, there's this nice, beautiful chemical change happening inside your body, which affects your mind. So there is an active psychology involved in the practice of yoga. So the question comes, how should you practice yoga? You should practice yoga for yourself with your eyes closed. Do not compete, do not struggle, be free. Always. So when you're in the times that we are living in, we find people practicing yoga in different ways. Some of these things do not even come from India. I have never seen any of those things in India. For example, sometimes people are doing something what they call as acro yoga, where they are hanging, whatever it is called, like they're hanging from ropes and other things. Now, my question is, okay, you're doing yoga for your body. Now, what happens if the rope breaks? You fall down and you break your neck. So, yoga should be practiced in a very safe, comfortable environment. So, there is a certain way to practice yoga, and that needs to be acknowledged and appreciated. There are different ways in which people are practicing yoga, and everybody is free to choose how they practice yoga. But always remember, you have to take care of your own safety and comfort when you're practicing yoga. Be very kind to yourself. Be very kind and gentle towards yourself. So that is why always practice at home or someplace where you know that you're safe, where you can put the mat and lie down on the floor, and the floor is not like this. Sometimes we see on Instagram and TikTok where people are going and doing handstands and other things on mountain tops or on top of a rock or near swimming pools. Now, when you're doing near the swimming pool, the floor is wet. What happens if you slip? You're going to cause injury. So, is the purpose of yoga to cause injury? No, the purpose of yoga is to make yourself happy and free, to live happily and free. So yoga should be practiced in a nice, safe environment. But whoever is practicing asanas in any different ways, it is up to them how to practice. I'm just presenting my view here. People might disagree with this. I might get a lot of angry comments on this, but I'm just saying, I think I have a valid reason to say that you have to practice yoga in a safe and comfortable environment. Also, traditionally, when we practice yoga, we practice with very minimal light. We didn't have too much lights and everything. But now we practice in studios with harsh light. So when you close your eyes, the light is hitting your eyes and you're not able to close your eyes properly and things like that. And unfortunately, even when I am teaching online, I have lights because I need to have that visual clarity for the person to see. Because normally when I'm teaching in person, it is easy. I can go around, walk around and adjust. But when I'm not teaching in person, the only way the participant can understand what's going on is through listening and through seeing. So that's why I have all the lights when I'm teaching yoga online. But when I'm practicing alone, it's mostly there's hardly any light. There's only enough light to make sure that I can see what is in the room. That's it. Yeah. So yoga is always about the mind. So you use your body as a tool for meditation. You let go of all your fears, your anger, your anxiety. As you cultivate your asana, as you cultivate your asana practice, you will see more and more improvement in that. You will feel much more happier. I am able to speak about this because I have personally experienced this. I was not this guy. 7 years back, I was in a city working in companies, getting working for hours and hours with very bad body posture, very bad health composition. It changed a lot after I started practicing yoga. So practicing yoga has its benefit, but the most important benefit is always about the mind. Again, going back to the beginning where I said that you are a spark of the infinite divine being, yoga helps you to meditate and understand that you, from that position of meditation, you understand that you are such a beautiful person, that you are complete, that you're perfect, you're whole. You don't have to be somebody else for somebody else. You be you. Girish becomes Girish. David becomes David. You don't want David to become Girish or Girish to become, Satyananda Saraswati or any guru or whatever it is. Each person has to be their own, and meditation helps you to that. And yoga helps you to meditate, because sitting like this and trying to meditate, it is very hard. Because the idea of meditation to be like sitting like this and doing, it comes from pop culture, where they saw these sadhus and sannyasis sitting like this and meditating. It has taken them years and years of practice of yoga to be able to sit like this and meditate. They did not reach like that from day one. To reach there, they have done a lot of yoga throughout their lives. So everybody wants to drive a Ferrari in a Formula One setup. But to reach that, you have to start with your father's old car in your driveway. So that is yoga. So you start there and then you go drive a Ferrari. I hope I'm making sense here when I'm speaking about it. So that would be, I think I will wind up this session today because I've already taken up a lot of time. As I mentioned earlier itself, I am not a man of few words. I can keep talking for ever and ever. And some of the topics that I talk about are also topics which are like rabbit holes where you never reach the end. So you can go on and on and on. But for today's session, I am winding up with wherever we are today right now. Maybe I will hold some other session some other time, and we will explore some other topics or the same topics in depth at that point. But also before I will open for questions and answers. But before that, I also want to make a small request. Think about it as a little bit of marketing. So I teach yoga, as I have already mentioned. I teach yoga online from Bogota, and I also teach yoga in the park near the house. So if you are curious about yoga and you want to learn yoga from a traditional perspective with psychology and your wholesomeness and your integrity as the foundation of it, I would invite you to come and join my yoga lessons. If you are interested in that, please leave me a message either through the chat here. If you're leaving it on the chat, please give me your email ID. I can send you more details there. Or if you're contacting me over Facebook or Instagram or WhatsApp or however it is later, you can just leave me a message and I'll send you more details. It's a very easy practice. I would say that it is something that can be practiced by everybody, irrespective of age, gender, or any sort of fitness conditions. The only exception being that in the traditional systems, we say that pregnant women, we encourage them not to practice yoga for a lot of reasons. But that is what the traditional system says, and then I believe in that what they say because they have a reason for saying that. But as an individual, as a person, you have the right to understand what your body is. You have the right to choose what your body is. So if you want to practice, you can practice. It is the same thing with women who are menstruating. During the days of menstruation, we encourage them not to practice yoga. But again, I am nobody to say that. So your body, your choice. So if you want to practice during that time, yes, you can. So thank you so much. And if you are interested in joining for any of the yoga sessions, you can write to me, and I will send you more details as you send me the message. So that would be the end of the session. So if anybody has any questions that needs to be answered, please ask, and I will be free to answer any questions. You can either ask through your mic, or you can type in a message, and I will reply. So it looks like there aren't any questions. But in future, if you have any questions, please feel free to write to me through Instagram or Facebook or WhatsApp or email, and I will try to answer those questions. So with that, we wind up this session, and I will keep you posted on the next session and the next topic that I'll be talking about. And if you're interested, please do join. Thank you. Namaste.